welcome back to World Crisis Radio, our second hour here. And we want to keep up with events in Greece. All eyes, the entire attention of the world will increasingly be fixed on Greece as we go towards the elections, parliamentary elections on, I guess it's Sunday, the 25th of January. Now, we got a very good report from Michael Chiotinis in Athens last week. I just want to remind people how important this was. He told us very interesting stuff about the Syriza program, talking about free electricity and free food and other benefits for about 300,000 extremely poor families. That is, in reality, that's a centerpiece of the Pact of Salonika, which is the election program that Syriza is running at. And Michael also warned us against the insidious manipulations of this guy Stavros Theodorakis. And Stavros is the head of this party called The River, or Potami. He says he calls it the river because his program is so clear and limpid. But in reality, as soon as I finished this interesting interview last week, I looked at Bloomberg, and there's Bloomberg News, right? Wall Street in person, saying the kingmaker in the election is going to be Stavros Theodorakis. So ahead of the news here with the help of Michael Chiotinis. So, Michael, welcome. What's happening? Tell us how you see it.
Hello, Webster. Thank you for having me. Well, the thing is about the river, this river. I'm warning against it since the first time that he appeared on the public arena, really. He presented this party, the river, alone, just himself. He very much reminded me of Mussolini, really. I'm sorry.
No, you're right. Absolutely.
And I was thinking that the river is like the March on Rome. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
He tries to give it the sense of a mass movement, something from down up, which really isn't. It's just a manipulation, political manipulation, just to keep the old regime going. Now, let me give you some background about the economic situation in Greece. You probably heard about 27% unemployment and 65% youth unemployment. Well, those figures are an underestimation.
Right.
Real unemployment, I think, is about 35%, because, they don't count. Unemployment, as it seems, doesn't count people discouraged. They don't count people working for 1 day each week. They don't account for people who work in completely different line of work than what their real skills are. So real unemployment, also a very big percentage of people are working on the minimum wage. Let me tell you, if you don't believe me. There's some crazy things happening, and I know they might sound a bit far-fetched, but they really aren't. Craziness, ruthlessness has been ruling for the last 5 years in Greece. Now, the thing is, besides the economic situation, the unemployment, we have certainly the most important problem is the demographic crisis. We have population actually decreasing. We're talking now about a Western developed, or formerly developed anyway, Western economy, with 11 million people population, and in spite of immigration coming in, population is actually decreasing, because we have no births, births have fallen about 50%. That's very sad. People are not allowed, actually, they're not able to form families, to to raise children, to have children. They don't dare have children. And we have immigration going out, actually. We have highly educated Greeks migrating to other European countries and the US. My figures is 150,000 highly educated people to 200. 150 to 200,000 Greeks. We're talking about 11 million population. Now, let's talk a little about the Salonika program, the program Teresa is running on. Now, I'm telling you, it's really modest, to say the least. It's actually a very small, really half measures. But the thing is that in such crises, half measures are certainly a start, but they are enough, certainly, to cause a hysteria by the system, by the regime ruling Greece. Now, let's see here about, the program. So, first of all, we have intention with dealing with the humanitarian crisis in Greece. There's they talk about free electricity for 300,000 households. Also food stamps for the first time in Greece. We never had food stamps as a social measure. Also, again, for 300,000 households. We have a small pension increase for very small pensions, and especially for people who are disabled, which is very important. And we're talking about only 150,000 pensions, disabled pensions, something like this. We're talking about rent subsidy to help 30,000 homeless families to get back in an actual home. We're talking about free healthcare for the unemployed and also medicine. Free public transportation for unemployed and people under the poverty line. We're talking about a tax cut on diesel consumption, heating diesel, actually, for people who use diesel as for heating their homes. And let me say here, we had a case of, because people are unable to buy heating diesel, we had a sad case of students dying from carbon monoxide poisoning because people all over the country are trying to burn anything they can get their hands on to heat their homes. Now, the second big group of measures is concerns restarting the economy. Now, let us see a little bit about this. What Syriza is saying on this. We see here putting an end to legal prosecutions and things like bank account confiscations, salary confiscations for debtors, for people who have huge debts to the government.
Hang on, Michael. We'll discuss this in the second segment. Hang on. Stay on the line. We'll be right back on World Crisis Radio with the Salonika Compact. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. We're getting a rundown from Michael Chiotinis in Athens as we go towards this landmark Greek vote on the 25th of January. The Salonika Compact, the Salonika program of the Syriza election formation. First pillar is the humanitarian crisis. The second one we're just going through is protecting the economy. so you can't be, thrown out on the street for tax problems. I believe they've got the first 12,000 euros are going to be tax-free. That's essentially the reform of the tax system from the bottom up that we here have also demanded. And I think you've also got, if you've got a house, your primary residence will be not taxed. You won't have to pay these huge real estate taxes. So, Michael, please take it from there.
We have to say here that people these past years, couldn't pay their taxes or debts to the government, were actually stopped by being able to do business. And what Syriza is saying is that they should be able to do business. They should be able to come to an agreement about how they're going to pay, and then they can restart doing business, start their economic activity. Producing, providing services, hiring people.
Right.
Now, someone might ask, what's so brilliant about that? I mean, you think that the IMF-imposed regime didn't want economic activity to occur? Well, it's actually not a matter of brilliance, as I see it. It's actually a matter of intentions. And what are the intentions of a government? And the intention was actually, in my opinion, to confiscate wealth. It wasn't a case of creating economic activity through this IMF regime. It was actually wealth confiscation. And I don't know what they were going to do with all this real estate, and maybe securitize it, sell it abroad.
I think Steve Forbes wanted to come and buy the Parthenon, didn't he?
Anyway, yes, but we're talking about private property here. Okay,
right.
There's a whole program of selling public assets, but we're talking here about private property being confiscated for debts, and I don't know what, securitize it, sell it as collateral for liquidity. I have no idea. God knows what derivatives, I don't know. But people weren't allowed to do business with this regime, and that's, I think, interesting.
Maybe we can compare this to debtor's prison, right? In Britain and so forth, if you had a certain amount of debt, you could be put in prison, right? I think Nicholas Nickleby by Charles Dickens is a story about people who are in debtor's prison or on the edge. The American state of Georgia was founded by this guy Oliver Oglethorpe mainly to say you can't be put in jail for owing money. Right? You got to be out there so you can work it off. Sounds similar.
Yes, or peonage for
peonage.
The best scenario is peonage. The worst, of course, is prison. Actually, they stopped this imprisonment. They did have imprisonment for debtors for 1,000 euros or something.
Sure.
And at least they stopped that. Anyway, we see here also inside the program they're running on, Syriza is running on, 12-month seizing of all legal measures against debtors, and we're talking here about debtors with demonstrably zero income,
right,
who are being legally prosecuted. We're seeing here restoring the minimum wage to what it was 3 years ago. And
how much is that?
It's around 780 euros, around 800 euros per month. Yes. Right. Restoring what you said before, the tax-free income level to what it was. They were taxing people below the poverty line here in Greece, 6,000 euros annually. You had an annual income of 6,000 euros being taxed, actually, with an income tax, if you don't believe me. They're talking about a debt jubilee or a debt freeze for so-called red loans. You call a loan or a mortgage red. You say it's red when the debtor is behind in payments, at least 3 months or 4 months. I don't know exactly.
In arrears. People that are in arrears if there's several payments behind.
Yes. They call it red loans. And
red.
God forbid for banks to have red loans on their balance sheets. They're talking about a development bank. That's interesting.
Right.
Special purpose banking institutions for small businesses and farmers, run by the government, of course. We should say here that the whole banking system, Greek banking system, is actually owned by the government because of bailout money, because of the debt restructure that took place 3 years ago, the so-called PSI, the great haircut, which is the only haircut in the history of economic of humanity, with which they striked inside holders of Greek sovereign debt more than the outside. I don't think it's ever been done. And the banks went bankrupt because of this. And they now are owned by the government, but run by bankers. They're not. The government is not allowed to intervene in the management of the banks. That's a bit strange. So they're talking about, of course, taking control of the banks because they are publicly owned, de facto, and they're talking about using bank bailout money set aside but not used. And they say you will use that for a program. Also, they're talking about things like tax evasion.
Michael, I'm sorry, I guess we're out of time. Next week's update, we're going to see you in our next week. Thank you very much.